I I said my neighbor came down and she went on and on about she likes my hair and my jewelry and my top and so anyway, it made me feel really good. But anyway, I was just getting ready to do this video. I wanted to do a little catch up. One of the people that has subscribed to uh, my channel had asked me some questions and kind of it wasn't negative at all. It was very complimentary, but he was just asking some questions about, and I think he was relating to the last conversation that's been kind of going on through the Pryor family with Isabel, Jane, and Samuel, and her dying in 1870, and then he's not there either. Now, some people have him being still alive, but their four kids all ended up in various the youngest one was only 1 year old. So where was mom and dad and what happened? And I found records where she actually had died near Muscatine. And so I think it's really kind of interesting how Muscatine has still been following through what I'm kind of going into today, going like it's a different step, but I think it's gonna, I was kind of intrigued by it. I'm sure when I get off, I'll probably be doing some more research just myself. But so the family, the next surname that I was going to take on was Bates, and Lorenzo D Bates is his name, and he grew up in Pennsylvania, and he fell madly in love, or they fell madly in love with each other when they were, I think, like in their latter teen years. Her farm was down the street from his parents' farm. So he was a farmer, but he took off and he left Pennsylvania and he went out to Iowa. And I didn't really have any information how he got there. And, and I've kind of said that a few times on videos. I wonder how these people really get around. And, sometimes it just says that they either walk or they ride a horse. But so he went out and he took there was some state land that was available. And so he got himself some land and he was out there for 2 years before um, they decided they were going to get married. And so by herself, she went from Philadelphia and what I followed it even this morning to make sure, I always like to kind of review a little bit, but it answered a lot of questions for me in regards to how she got there. So she left Pennsylvania by herself, got on a train, and went to Pittsburgh. And then she got what was called the Canal. Let me see what it was. It's a type of a boat, and it was kind of fascinating to me because they even showed pictures when I was looking to see. And it's in some cases the charter boats, I think they're called, or it's not that. But anyway, I know I wrote it down because I just had never heard of it. They look like the ships that are in Europe, and they're known actually for that um, because the canals are like not necessarily really deep and not wide enough to actually do anything other than they're long boats and um, they oh, here it is, Canal Packet it was called. And so she got a Canal Packet, which meant her going on the uh, Ohio Erie Canal, and they had dug out all that. And in some cases, it was so shallow that they actually would have like burros, mules, um, on both sides of the canal and would be pulling it along. It still saved about 10 days of travel if you were going from Philadelphia west. But so she went on the train first, and then she got this packet boat, and she took it down the Ohio River and then over and went back up the Mississippi River, and that was a steamboat You always think of the, Twain going on the steamer boats, but she did go anyway. She landed in Muscatine. So here we go again. I'm in a different family, different kind of situation, and so Lorenzo has went to Muscatine, and he's waiting for her, and she takes this long trip by herself. And when she gets there, they get married that afternoon. And then I don't know, maybe they had, and I think I've mentioned this before too. Muscadine comes off as kind of a party town or a celebration town. It's on the Mississippi that looks kind of like the ocean. And so it's very festive. So, I hope kind of, I didn't see anything in the records that they actually had a celebration dinner or a party or anything like that. But then he took her back up to Olin in Jones County, which was a little further west than where we've been talking about the prior situation with those people. But what's interesting about this, they had 10 kids. And the out of those 10 kids, the last one um, is Isabel Jane Wilson. And that's the lady that had the 4 kids and then died someplace of something. And so a little bit back to what I was starting out, because I wanted to give um, the people who are watching the videos some information. I think this person might even do some research because they kind of like a good mystery, and I think it's still gonna take like going through all the newspapers. But just knowing this additional piece of information gave me some other ideas to maybe search it out. So she was the youngest child of Lorenzo D Bates, and Teresa Fox was her name. And they had these 10 kids. So out of all the years I've done genealogy, I've always thought about this whole story about Lorenzo D Bates. That's a pretty cool name to have too. It's like Lorenzo D Bates. And he was a go-getter. He went out there, he got some state land, and he started farming it. He ended up he became quite a in a small town, almost a celebrity in a way. And so one of the very, very, very first trips that we took, the kids were little at that point, and we actually stopped there, and I went to the library in Olin, and they were like, oh, they knew all the story about him, and that he was really known for being almost like the first teacher and building the first schoolhouse. So he was very involved in the education of that community, and everybody, highly regarded him. And then we went out to the cemetery. Well, actually, I went and got the land map first because I wanted to go and stand where their farm was. I just had that feeling, for me, that was something I wanted to do. And so we went out there, and then we went to the cemetery, and he had one of the largest, biggest, uh, tombstone that money could buy probably. There wasn't any big ones out there bigger than his. And that's the place, and I think I mentioned a couple videos back where the kids and I actually did have the charcoal and the paper, and we, rubbed and everything. But as I said before, it's gone now. Um, so Lorenzo, it was interesting because there was just a lot more documentation. So when and she was very active in the community too. In her obituary, she was active in the church. She was active in kind of politics and even keeping up with what was going on, when the westward movement that people were taking. And then the Civil War started, and he was asked to join, and he did. And in the obituary, it actually said that she had actually told somebody that if she was a man, she would have went because she really believed in why the fight was being fought. And but she stayed home and took care of the 10 kids, and which was probably, kind of a extreme hardship. And I had read, a lot of times in those early days, the guys and especially in the Civil War, they walked many, many through states. And so he had, I got his medical record or his military records, and he was, you know, got to read kind of. And then when he died, she applied for a pension for against his service, and it must have been 10 pages of all the legalities that she had to go through, and she got, kind of a pittance amount, but back then it was enough, for her to take care of herself and the younger kids. So it was interesting reading the pension records, and what he came home and he had health issues. And and at some point, I haven't seen it very recently. It might be in with my pictures, but it actually said why what his medical diagnosis would have been back then. And it basically was from walking from Iowa to Mississippi to fight in the war. He actually had his arches, so they fell down. So he was suffering from that, and that he had hemorrhoids really bad. And actually, the rest of his life, he had, extreme bouts of illnesses and everything. But he lived to be, um, an older, dude. And when he wasn't sick, like anything really happened to him, he just sat down in the chair and kind of went to sleep. And one of his grandsons came in and found him, and he was dead. So then, there was a big write up on him because of his service to the education system. There was the write up as far as him being in the Civil War, and then of course I got a hold of the will, and so the land, and they mentioned all the different um, oh, down to a shovel or a rake or something. But it was a very, it was a couple pages long. And a lot of the farmers that I've seen their wills, they haven't accumulated that much up. So he was very successful in his life. And, and was very, I mean, when you think about it, that many years have gone by that, and you walk into the library and they know exactly, who I'm talking about, and you bring out a book and show the first school that he helped build. And she sounded like she was very educated and read a lot. And so it was kind of exciting. They were farmers, but they were very active in in the church and in the community. And so one of the things that came up for me, though, when I was doing this research with Lorenzo D Bates and his family and everything, for um, Muscatine to show up again. So I'm kind of wondering now. I mean, I've been trying to match up the dates to see if there was some. I mean, there is a connection between them, but it was kind of, I don't know how long a trip it would be, especially in although maybe the train was running east to west by then. And for some of the priors, actually, they definitely were matched, DNA matched to each other, but I don't know if they ever met each other or would they give any more clues as far as what happened to um, the young man and the young woman. And, and again, I keep going over what I have found and feel really good about it. But I certainly feel better if I could just find what happened to them, and just for me to have some closure, because the kids were just, you know, they just were passed around, and most of them they lived really long lives and really good lives, and um, especially the boys stayed close, off and on, clear up into their 80s. It was kind of fascinating. So I also, going to, oh, excuse me, going into this whole idea that, I'm going to start tackling another surname, thinking it necessarily was not going to give me, videos to do any more on the priors in a way. I mean, there's some more to do on the priors, and I enjoy doing the priors because I actually have went the other way and went completely back into where these people are really alive. And there was a man and his wife, and they contacted me at one point, and he was a prior, but he had no idea, that was, I think his parents divorced or something, and they somehow were separated. But this guy is like the head of the autism program in California. So, he was very interested for a while, and I keep them in touch what I'm doing and now with the videos. And so if they want to, um, you know, get involved at that level, and they're, so it's always like in some ways I want to go further and get into the older part, like, going that direction, but at the same time I like looking for the people that are still alive and are still um, doing the research. But of the 10 kids, they all, the Bates kids, I think there was a couple of them maybe that did pass of a really early age, but the most of them became very prominent. One was a lawyer, and one was um, financial person of some sort. And I think it's just kind of a different story than some of the other families that I've connected into, especially the ones in that period of time where they were out in, I mean, Iowa was not not a very it was a very harsh place to make a living, and a lot of people made it. But some of those winters, I have read a book, and it was one of the worst winters they ever had. And somehow there was a weather person involved, excuse me, involved, that would actually send a notice of a possible storm coming. And so then they would keep the kids home from school. Well, somehow that communication broke down, and so the kids had not been sent home from school. So they actually had tied ropes all the way, and the kids had to hang on to the ropes, and it was just this horrendous blizzard, and lost a lot of kids that would have been in the school, but they would have probably froze to death, if they would have stayed. But then trying to get home, yeah, I think it gave me a really good idea of like, and I have been in Omaha, Nebraska in the middle of winter, and I think it was minus 23 degrees, and I didn't stay there very long. And so we all just kind of went down to Florida for the winter. But and some of the times they would lose their crop and everything. But this family, I really, I kind of hold it dear to my heart in a way, because who doesn't like a good love story of, you know, living happily ever after for the rest of your life. Um and when you think of the odds of everything that was going on with um the war, and um, the weather and all that, I feel like, and for some reason his name also seems like, um, aristocratic. Now these are some of the now. So Samuel, he actually went to Iowa, or yeah, into Iowa from Ohio, but I haven't taken him further back. But now with the Bates, by jumping all the way back to Pennsylvania, um, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh area, and in fact, I was semi surprised a little bit that all of the people that I was actually researching still were farmers in those areas. But I'm getting excited to get it further and further back where I can. You know, a lot of times I see right now, people from Yugoslavia, people from Poland, people from a lot of Irish people, and I think a lot of the people that were DNA connected to my family were Irish. But then with the last name MacDonald and playing the bagpipes, I am not surprised that I'm going to find more in Scotland with those people. The other day, though, I was thinking about when you do your ancestry.com DNA, it breaks it down. So it kind of shows you, like, especially in Europe, as far as where that your DNA clusters. And I thought it was interesting because and it's the smallest amount of DNA that you can have and have a match to a person. And it's a little tiny island off of Italy, and it's Sardinia, I think it's called. And I watched a documentary, and they have more people that live there to be 100 years old than any place else in the world. And they were doing this documentary to see what they were, drinking, what they were eating. You know, did they smoke? Did they? It was fascinating. Of course, you're probably getting a little bit of a hint to know me, which direction I go with this. I mean, I love the genealogy part of it and everything, but I always really, really like getting the trip out also. So when I actually was, talking to Lois, and I went out there, with this prior situation, and I went to those counties and those cities. And when I was coming back, I had to go through Olin. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just stop and go up. I think I needed another picture of his headstone or something. But um, it was interesting how small Olin. I think it was smaller than even when we had went like 20 years before. And I didn't see any grocery stores or restaurants really. There was a bar. There was one bar, and yeah, so I went in. I was hungry. I was hoping they had some food, and they did. They had really good food. So I think it was a special kind of soup, but they were more intrigued with the stranger coming in, like I've mentioned other times when I'm traveling. But I think you get the whole flavor of a community and how they relate to each other too. So they'd gotten me, and then I think it was a cook that came over and started talking to me, and I told him about what I was doing there, and then this other lady came over and she wanted to talk to me, and so I talked to her also. And she goes, "Oh, well, here." She reached down in her purse and she brought out keys. And she handed me the keys and she said, "Well, if you just cross the street over there, that's the historical museum. And just take those keys and go in and look around." Yeah, that wouldn't happen in big city or medium-sized city, or probably only in Olin, Iowa. But I was laughing all the way across the street, all right, turning in the lock and going in. It was a little too musty for me, and the smell was just old. And but I got an idea. So that was kind of the second time I've got to see it from the inside. Like when I went to the courthouse and they took me all the way down and then left me down there with all the stuff. And I don't maybe they take the school kids there or something. I don't know. There was no other people other than the people I saw at the in the bar. and, and then when I laughed and I took the keys back and thanked him very much. And I thought, well, that was interesting. But as you can tell, yeah, right now I'm in Denver, and so I'm not other than going to cemeteries, I haven't gotten out too much. And Denver's pretty large. But the next video that I'm going to start in is the Allnuts, and that was my mother's maiden name, Allnutt. But she'd always laugh and tell us she was only half nuts, and so I was just growing up with that. But they had a large family of them, and my grandfather was the youngest, which is kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but he was the youngest, and in Montana, they were miners and some farmers, and they some a bunch of horse racing was going on and stuff. So anyway, I'll put that together, and that'll probably be my next video. But um, I enjoyed talking to you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.